Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Why am I doing this video? Am I giving a class? Am I trying to preach? What am I doing? What I found is this is a very good study practice. So I've got them on private. I don't know, I may put it public at some point. But right now, it's just me sitting in front of the camera and reading and studying and really trying to hear. It's like private time with Krishna. And I really need some private time with my spiritual master and Krishna, so that I can study nicely his teachings. So that's what's going on, and this is private time. And Krishna has a public presence, and it's very exciting, and there's a lot going on, but we need private time with Krishna. And that the japa helps us have some private time with Krishna. To just very intimate chanting Krishna's name. It's non-different from Krishna Balaram, that's the incarnation. And then we have a nice personal connection with Krishna. And then there's kirtan. And Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's controlling everything. But this chanting on these beads, private time, private meditation. So this video is like private time, where I'm just me and Prabhupada and Krishna, and trying to hear. Hare Krishna. So this seems to be a really good way to study. Not necessarily writing things down, but speaking, and then also hearing, and then looking at the video again privately and hearing what I was so I'm just going to do like that. So this is the Krishna book and summary study of the 10th canto, Bhagavatam, and why Duryodhana felt insulted at the end of the Rājasūya sacrifice. Why did Duryodhana feel insulted? King Yudhisthira was known as a Jatasatru, or a person who has no enemy. Therefore, when all men, all demigods, all kings, sages, saints saw the successful termination of the Rājasūya sacrifice performed by King Yudhisthira, they became very happy. That Duryodhana alone was not happy was astonishing to Maharaj Parikshit, and therefore he requested Sukadeva Goswami to explain this. Sukadeva Goswami said, "My dear King Parikshit, your grandfather, King Yudhisthira," okay, I thought his grandfather was Arjuna. It wasn't. Well, yeah, it was. Wait a minute. Parikshit. Well, they were brothers that had the same mother. Okay. So he's like a grandfather. Whether he was the actual seminal grandfather, I don't know, because sometimes Arjuna, it's always his grandfather, Arjuna. So here, your grandfather, King Yudhisthira, was a great soul. His congenial disposition attracted everyone as his friend, and therefore he was known as Ajatashatru, one who never created an enemy. He engaged all the members of the Kuru dynasty in taking charge of different departments for the management of the Rājasūya sacrifice. For example, Bhimasena was put in charge of the kitchen department, Duryodhana in charge of the treasury department. Of course, Bhimasena was a voracious eater. He was in charge of the kitchen. Duryodhana in charge of the treasury department. Sahadev in charge of the reception department. Nakula in charge of the store department. And Arjuna was engaged in looking after the comforts of the elderly persons. The most astonishing feature was that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, took charge of washing the feet of all the incoming guests. The queen, the goddess of fortune Draupadi, was in charge of administering the distribution of food. The goddess of fortune Draupadi. She was married to Arjuna. And she's called the goddess of fortune. It's with small g and small f, goddess of fortune. Is that just like a compliment? A way to compliment her? Or is she actually a goddess of fortune? And you can say, oh, the goddess of fortune, but it's not really the goddess of fortune. She has so many good qualities, she's like the goddess of fortune. Is that what's being said here? The goddess of fortune, Draupadi, was in charge of administering the distribution of food. And because Karna was famous for giving charity, he was in charge of the charity department. In this way, Satyaki, Vikarna, Hardikya, Vidura, Burishrava, and Santardana, the son of Balika, were all engaged in different departments for managing the affairs of the Rājasūya sacrifice. They were all so bound in love and affection for King Yudhisthira that they simply wanted to please him. Karna, Duryodhana, all bound in love. Well, they were engaged. After Shishupal had died by the mercy of Lord Krishna and become merged in the spiritual existence, and after the end of the Rājasūya Yagna, when all friends, guests, and well-wishers had been sufficiently honored and rewarded, King Yudhisthira went to bathe in the Ganges. The city of Hastinapur is today standing on the bank of the Yamuna, and the statement of Srimad Bhagavatam that King Yudhisthira went to bathe in the Ganges indicates, therefore, that during the time of the Pandavas, the river Yamuna was also known as the Ganges. While the king was taking the Avabrita bath, different musical instruments such as mridangas, conch shells, drums, kettle drums, and bugles vibrated. In addition, the ankle bells of the dancing girls jingled. Many groups of professional singers played venas, flutes, songs, and cymbals. Thus a tumultuous sound vibrated in the sky. The princely guests from many kingdoms, like Srinjaya, Cambodia, Kuru, Caitanya, and Koshala, were present with their different flags and gorgeously decorated elephants, chariots, horses, and soldiers. All were passing in procession, and King Yudhisthira was in the forefront. So these descriptions are very vivid, and they're very beautiful. And by fixing them in my mind, then I have something to think about and meditate on during the day. They're beautiful descriptions. So I want to read it again about this procession, what was going on at the end of the Rājasūya sacrifice when Maharaj Yudhisthira was bathing in the Ganges. While the king was taking the Avabrita bath, different musical instruments, such as mridangas, conch shells, drums, kettle drums, and bugles vibrated. You can hear all those sounds combined together. Mridangas, conch shells, drums, kettle drums, bugles, all vibrating. In addition, the ankle bells of the dancing girls jingled. Many groups of professional singers played venas, flutes, gongs, and cymbals, and thus a tumultuous sound vibrated in the sky. The princely guests from many kingdoms like Srinjaya, Cambodia, Kuru, Caitanya, and Koshala were present with their different flags and gorgeously decorated elephants, chariots, horses, and soldiers. Sights and sounds. Are there any smells? All were passing in a procession, and King Yudhisthira was in the forefront. So all these sounds are going on, and flags are waving, and the soldiers, all the decorated animals. The executive members, such as the priests, religious ministers, and brahmanas, were performing a sacrifice, and all were loudly chanting the Vedic hymns. The demigods, the inhabitants of the Pitri Loka and Gandharva Loka, as well as many sages, showered flowers from the sky. What a scene. The men and women of Hastinapur, Indraprasthra, their bodies smeared with scents and floral oils, were nicely dressed in colorful garments and decorated with garlands, jewels, and ornaments. Okay, so there's some fragrances. So you've got the sounds, the smells, the visual experience. They were all enjoying the ceremony, and they threw on each other liquid substances like water, oil, milk, butter, and yogurt. So then you've got a sense of touch going on too. They're pouring liquid substances on each other. Some even smeared these on each other's bodies. In this way, they were enjoying the occasion. The professional prostitutes were also engaged in jubilantly smearing these liquid substances on the bodies of the men, and the men reciprocated in the same way. And the sensual experience, Krishna All the liquid substances had been mixed with turmeric and saffron, and the color was a lustrous yellow. Well, the clothes were all ruined. Hare Krishna. In order to observe the great ceremony, many wives of the demigods had come in different airplanes, and they were visible in the sky. Similarly, the queens of the royal family arrived gorgeously decorated and surrounded by bodyguards on the surface on different palanquins. So now here come the 16,108 queens, all surrounded by bodyguards while all of this is going on. It was the residents of Hastinapur, Indraprastha, King Yudhishthir's subjects, who were doing all the smearing and the pouring of, and then the prostitutes smearing on the bodies of the men, and the sounds are going on, and the sights of all the other kings, and it's quite an event. And the demigods in their airplanes are showering flowers, and here come Krishna's 16,108 queens with their bodyguards. During this time, Lord Krishna, the maternal cousin of the Pandavas, and his special friend Arjuna were both throwing the liquid substances on the bodies of the queens. Arjuna was throwing substances on Krishna's queens. Oh my goodness. The queens became bashful, well, I'm sure, but at the same time their beautiful smiling faces brightened their faces. Because of the liquid substances thrown on their bodies, the saris covering them were completely wet. The different parts of their beautiful bodies, particularly their breasts and their waists, became partially visible because of the wet cloth. It was a very sensual experience. The queens also brought in buckets of liquid substances and sprinkled them on the bodies of the brothers-in-law. Sprinkled them on the substances of their brothers-in-law. So considering their cousins, but considering them brothers-in-law. As they engaged in such jubilant activities, their hair fell loose. The flowers decorating their bodies began to fall. Lord Krishna, Arjuna, and the queens were thus engaged in jubilant activities. Arjuna is engaging like this with Krishna's queens. Persons who were not clean in heart became agitated by lustful desires. In other words, such behavior between pure males and females is enjoyable, but persons who are materially contaminated become lustful. Hare Krishna. King Yudhishthira, in a gorgeous chariot, yoked by excellent horses, was present with his queens, including Draupadi and others. So he had other queens. The festivities of the sacrifice were so beautiful that it appeared as if Rājasūya was standing there in person with the functions of the sacrifice. Rājasūya was standing there in person. Following the Rājasūya sacrifice, there was the Vedic ritualistic duty known as Patni Samyaja. This sacrifice was performed along with one's wife, and it was also duly performed by the priests of King Yudhishthira. When Queen Draupadi and King Yudhishthira were taking their Avabrita bath, the citizens of Hastinapur, as well as the demigods, began to beat on drums and blow trumpets out of feelings of happiness, and there was a shower of flowers from the sky. When the king and the queen finished their baths in the Ganges, all the other citizens, consisting of the varnas or castes, the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and Sudras, took their baths in the Ganges. Bathing in the Ganges is recommended in the Vedic literatures because by such bathing one becomes freed from all sinful reaction. This is still current in India, especially at particularly auspicious moments. At such times, millions of people bathe in the Ganges. After taking his bath, King Yudhisthira dressed in a new silken cloth and wrapper and decorated himself with valuable jewelry. The king not only dressed himself and decorated himself, but he also gave clothing and ornaments to all the priests, and so the others who had participated in the yajna. In this way, they were all worshipped by King Yudhisthira. He constantly worshipped his friends, his family members, his relatives, his well-wishers, and everyone present. Because he was a great devotee of Lord Narayan, or because he was a Vaishnav, he therefore knew how to treat everyone well. The Mayavadi philosophers' endeavor to see everyone as God is an artificial way towards oneness. But as a Vaishnav, or a devotee of Lord Narayan, sees every living entity as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, a Vaishnav's treatment of other living entities is on the absolute platform, since one cannot treat one part of his body differently from another part, because they all belong to the same body. So, a Vaishnav does not see a human being as distinct from an animal, because in both of them he sees the soul and the supersoul seated simultaneously. So what does the impersonalist see when he sees an animal? Does he see Narayan? How does he understand the other species of life? I don't remember hearing discussion of that. Only when they look at each other they say Om Narayan. How do they see other living entities that aren't in human bodies? I know amongst some of the communities that worship Jesus, they actually don't think other living entities are souls. They're just things or something. You know? They don't have a soul. Krishna. And that when the body dies, the soul either goes to heaven or hell, which is kind of simplistic. The soul goes somewhere, but there's more going on in the creation than just heaven and hell. Krishna. When everyone was refreshed after bathing and was dressed in silken clothing with jeweled earrings, flower garlands, turbans, long wrappers, and pearl necklaces, they looked altogether like the demigods from heaven. This was especially true of the women, who were very nicely dressed. Each wore a golden belt around the waist. They were all smiling. Spots of tilak and curling hair were scattered here and there. This combination was very attractive. So that's everyone. It's all the citizens. Hare Krishna. Persons who had participated in the Rājasūya sacrifice, including the most cultured priests, the Brahmanas, who had assisted in the performance of the sacrifice, the citizens of all Varnas, kings, demigods, sages, saints, and citizens of the Pitri-loka were all very much satisfied by the dealings of King Yudhisthira, and at the end they happily departed for their residences. While returning to their homes, they talked of the dealings of King Yudhisthira, and even after continuous talk of his greatness, they were not satiated, just as one may drink nectar over and over again and never be satisfied. After the departure of all others, Maharaj Yudhisthira restrained the inner circle of his friends, including Lord Krishna, by not allowing them to leave. Lord Krishna could not refuse the request of the king. He therefore sent back all the heroes of the Yadu dynasty like Samba and others. All of them returned to Dwarka, and Lord Krishna personally remained in order to give pleasure to the king. In the material world, everyone has a particular type of desire to be fulfilled, but one is never able to fulfill his desires to his full satisfaction. King Yudhisthira, because of his unflinching devotion to Krishna, could fulfill all his desires successfully by the performance of the Rājasūya yajna. From the description of the execution of the Rājasūya yajna, it appears that such a function is a great ocean of opulent desires. It is not possible for an ordinary man to cross over such an ocean. Nevertheless, by the grace of Lord Krishna, King Yudhisthira was able to cross over it very easily, and thus he became freed from all anxieties. From the description of the Rājasūya, it appears that a function like that is a great ocean of opulent desires. When Duryodhana saw that Maharaj Yudhisthira had become very famous after performance of the Rājasūya sacrifice and was fully satisfied in every respect, he began to burn with the fire of envy, because his mind was always poisonous. Why him, not me? Why him? It should be me, not him. So that's the kind of envy that a living entity is forced to leave the spiritual world. Why Krishna? Why him? Why not me? So Duryodhana had that envy focused on Yudhisthira. For one thing, he envied the imperial palace which had been constructed by the demon Maya for the Pandavas. The palace was excellent in its puzzling artistic workmanship and was befitting the position of great princes, kings, or leaders of the demon. In that great palace, the Pandavas were living with their family members, and Queen Draupadi was serving her husbands very peacefully. And because in those days Lord Krishna was also there, the palace was also decorated by his thousands of queens. When the queens, with their heavy breasts and thin waists, moved within the palace, and their ankle bells rang very melodiously with their movement, the whole palace appeared to be more opulent than the heavenly kingdoms. Because a portion of their breasts was sprinkled with saffron powder, the pearl necklaces on their breasts appeared to be reddish. With their full earrings and flowing hair, the queens appeared very beautiful. After looking at such beauties in the palace of King Yudhisthira, Duryodhana became envious. He became especially envious and lustful upon seeing the beauty of Draupadi, because he had cherished a special attraction for her from the very beginning of her marriage with the Pandavas. In the marriage selection assembly of Draupadi, Duryodhana had also been present, and with other princes he had been very much captivated by the beauty of Draupadi. But he had failed to achieve her. Once upon a time, King Yudhisthira was sitting on the golden throne in the palace constructed by the demon Maya. His 4 brothers and other relatives, as well as his great well-wisher, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, were present, and the material opulence of King Yudhisthira seemed to be no less than that of Lord Brahma. When he was sitting on the throne, surrounded by his friends, and the reciters were offering prayers to him in the form of nice songs, Duryodhana, with his younger brother, came to the palace. Duryodhana was decorated with a helmet, and he carried a sword in his hand. He was always in an envious and angry mood, and therefore, on a slight provocation, he spoke sharply with the doorkeepers and became angry. He was irritated because he failed to distinguish between water and land. By the craftsmanship of the demon Maya, the palace was so decorated in different places that one who did not know the tricks would consider water to be land and land to be water. Duryodhana was also illusioned by this craftsmanship, and when he was crossing water, thinking it to be land, he fell down. We see now sometimes there is this kind of artwork that people are doing, and they do a lot of it outside on sidewalks and walls of buildings, and it looks like there's actually a snake there, or it's like 3D art. It looks like there's water there. So this palace had that kind of art, that kind of craftsmanship, that it was water, but it was made to look like it was land. And sometimes the land that was decorated in such a way to make it look like water. When Duryodhana, out of his foolishness, had thus fallen, he fell into the water. The queens enjoyed the incident by laughing. King Yudhisthira could understand the feelings of Duryodhana, and he tried to restrain the queens from laughing. But Lord Krishna indicated that King Yudhisthira should not restrain them from enjoying the incident. Krishna desired that Duryodhana might be fooled in that way, and that all of them might enjoy his foolish behavior. When everyone laughed, Duryodhana felt very insulted, and his hair stood up in anger. Being thus insulted, he immediately left the palace, bowing his head. He was silent and did not protest. When Duryodhana left in such an angry mood, everyone regretted the incident, and King Yudhisthira also became very sorry. But despite all occurrences, Krishna was silent. He did not say anything against or in favor of the incident. It appeared that Duryodhana had been put into illusion by the supreme will of Lord Krishna. And this was the beginning of the enmity between the two sects of the Kuru dynasty. It appeared that it was a part of Krishna's plan in his mission to decrease the burden of the world. King Parikshit had inquired from Sukadeva Goswami as to why Duryodhana was not satisfied after the termination of the great Rājasūya sacrifice, and thus it was explained by Sukadeva Goswami. Thus in Bhaktivedanta purport of the 74th chapter of Krishna, why Duryodhana felt insulted after the Rājasūya sacrifice. Krishna. Next is the battle between Salva and the members of the Yadu dynasty. Almost done with Krishna book. A few more chapters. Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktananda a friend sent a little message with a nice quote from a devotee who he quoted Prabhupada that the deity is non-different from Krishna, and because in material world, material consciousness, we can't see spirit, so Krishna kindly appears in a deity form so we can engage in serving him. And he said it was something like, if a person's father dies and the person is there lamenting, oh, you're gone, but the body is there. So Prabhupada used that example. So what's gone? The body's lying there, what's gone? And in the conversation, the person said, well, the spirit is gone. He said, yes, because you can't see the spirit. All you can see is the body, you can't see the spirit. So Krishna kindly enters into a form made marble or wood, kindly enters into a form, the Supreme Spirit enters into a form so that it can engage in serving Krishna. Not exactly serving the wood, but the spirit, Krishna enters the deity. So that was very nice. And then I answered back that the deity is here to help us chant. Prabhupada was asked, he said, he was asked, we're chanting Hare Krishna, so we'll do more service, right, Prabhupada? And Prabhupada, he said something like, actually, you're serving Krishna and the deity, performing so many services, so you'll chant better. Because the incarnation for this age is the holy name. And then in the Krishna book, one section, I think chapter 15 maybe, Prabhupada explains there's no difference between meditating on the form of Radha Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So actually serving the deity is for very materialistic consciousness. Kanista Adhikari. This Krishna is always wonderful and absolute, but it's not all one. There are levels of consciousness, levels of realization, levels of intimacy, and serving the deity, anyone can do if they'll surrender to it. It is on a materialistic platform. Kanista Adhikari. And then I was remembering about Jagannath and Lord Chaitanya. They're both Krishna. Jagannath is Krishna. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. But Lord Chaitanya is in the mood of a devotee, and he is moving and doing things. And Jagannath deities, they're more or less stationary, except on Ratha Yatra, more or less stationary, and they're accepting worship as God, opulent, majestic, awesome God. So there's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we don't see spirit very well. So we can worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is in the mood of a devotee, who, Hare Krishna, is always chanting the holy name, Krishna. But I'm also thinking how it's important, very significant, to develop a personal relationship with Krishna, to have a sense of personal intimacy with the Lord. That has to come. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So I'm taking some time off from all the social media to just go deeper into studying and reflecting. Studying kind of like one-on-one with my spiritual master, Prabhupada. He's giving me private lessons. Hare Krishna. Krishna Chaitanya.